Welcome to the Glendale Arts and Culture Commission meeting on April 19th, 2018. May I have a roll call, please?
Commissioners Oshagan,
Yes.
Sharikian,
Yes.
Vice Chair Vidor,
Yes.
Chairperson Sahakian.
Yes.
For the record, Commissioner Derhovanesian is not present. The agenda for the April 19th meeting was posted on the bulletin board outside City Hall on April 16th, 2018. Item 2, consent items at 2A, approval of regular meeting minutes from March 15th, 2018.
Any changes?
I thought that right where it says that you recused, it should say the Vice Chair Arlene Vidor took over.
Sorry, that might be different than mine.
Oh, okay.
To make a note that you took over as chair.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
And then in addition,
Under comments?
No, there's an item when we get to the Public Art Master Plan where Sean recused.
and then in addition to that, this is action item A, motion 1. So it notes that I recuse myself, but I'm under the A's column on voting on that item. So if I could be moved to, I believe, is it abstain would be the appropriate place, Mike? For action item A1? Okay, before O, basically. Okay, great.
So leave it.
I'd have to be removed from the A's.
Remove it altogether.
Yeah.
Okay.
Any other changes or edits before we? Great, so I'll entertain a motion with those changes.
I move to approve.
Second.
Great, roll call, please.
Commissioners Oshagan,
Yes.
Sharikian,
Yes.
Vice Chair Vidor,
Yes.
Chairperson Sahakian.
Yes. Next item, please.
Item 3, introductions and presentations. At 3A, Library Arts and Culture events presented by Chuck Wyke, Community Relations Manager.
Good afternoon, Commissioners, Chair Sahakian, city staff, and visitors. I have a number of events and programs here coming up at the Library Arts and Culture Department. This particular photo we took last year. It's a great-looking dog. I can't remember his name. This is a gentleman that comes to your Brand Library Plaza performances every season. He's usually there very early with this dog, and I am happy to say that we will continue with those programs starting June 1st. So every Friday night at 7 o'clock at Brand Plaza, outdoors, we'll have a variety of music. This year, the selections include blues, jazz, Eastern European choir, and a ukulele performer, among the many. So there are 14 weeks of performances. I hope to see lots of people out there. There's always also lots of room on the grass below. Brand Library has a new sound system. We think it's going to be really, really good. You'll be able to hear it everywhere. Brand 46 works on paper. Just a reminder that the call for entry is due June 1st. That's their annual Works on Paper. There are some programs finishing up. Nonlinear Histories at the Downtown Central Library finishes up in May. And kind of a related exhibition, Continuity and Rupture, and Armenian Family Odyssey finishes up at the end of this month in April. Starting May 5th at the Brand Library, they have Vision Valley, the Glendale Biennial. Vision Valley is a nod to Glendale's long-standing artist community and history, and what will be on view is a diverse selection of works that are part of an ongoing dynamic multi-log between artists living or working in the Glendale area. And there are 32 participating artists this year, so I expect the Saturday, May 5th, that's the opening reception. That's going to be a big one. There's a docent tour at the Brand Library this Saturday with Jomi Wilson. That's at 9:30 in the morning. She's a very well-known tour guide and an international tour guide has written books, and she's given some tours, some really fun docent tours about the history of the Brand Library and Mr. Brand. So that's coming up Saturday. The Brand Associates Music Series continues also this Saturday at 2 p.m. with a group called String Harmonies. They play traditional folk, classical music, jazz, and world music. And then the following week, the Brand Associates Dance Series. It's April 28th at 4 p.m. This group is called Mashup. It's an all-female contemporary company led by artistic directors Sarah Rodenhouse and Victoria Brown, and it's aimed at creating innovative works that engage diverse communities with a special importance placed on motivating girls and women to be strong, confident, and articulate females. That's Mashup. That's next Saturday. We have a couple of films coming to the Downtown Central Library. Also on Saturday, if you can't make it up to Brand Library, stop in at this Downtown Central, and you can view a very famous 70s movie, Chinatown. That's 1974. It'll be playing in our auditorium. On April 25th, we continue with what is a 4-part series. It's a PBS documentary called The Rise and Fall of Jim Crow. It's a comprehensive look at race relations in America between the Civil War and the Civil Rights Movement. We had a really good crowd last night. It's co-sponsored by Antaeus Theater for its production of Native Son. I should also mention that on April 25th, some members of the cast of Native Son will be in attendance, and they will put on a little preview of their program at Antaeus. We have our first ever Maker Fest on Saturday, May 12th at the Downtown Central Library. We're going to take over most of the upstairs, including the auditorium. We've got, 3D printing. We've got some Lego things. We've got a music production in our sound space. We're going to be looking at virtual reality, robotics, sewing, circuit design, arts and crafts. We're going to try and kind of combine tech with, high tech with low tech, I guess you might say. There's a special presentation at 10:30 in the auditorium with the Beat Junkie Institute of Sound. That's a DJ group. They are old school, and they are actually located in Glendale. It's a real interesting facility. They're going to be in our auditorium, so if you ever wanted to be a DJ, this is a way to learn. Dia de los Niños, Dia de los Libros, that's the day of the book. We are celebrating that with many libraries across the country. Monday, April 3rd, we have a performer. She's multilingual, Natalia. She will perform at 3 p.m. in our auditorium. And then a real big group, the Ballet Folklorico Mexico Azteca, will perform at 6 p.m. To close out the Dia. Interestingly, that whole week we're calling that Children's Book Week. It's an American Library Association sponsored event, and we're going to have some fun Tuesday through Friday, May 1st through 4th. May 1st, I should note, 7 o'clock p.m., Catherine Applegate will discuss her book, Endling the Last. She was our children's One Book, One Glendale author in 2016. We always get a good crowd for all of our one-book authors, but hers in particular. She's very popular. If you're interested, May the 4th, be with you. That's Star Wars Day. You can dress as your favorite Star Wars character on Friday, May 4th. I hope to see you all there. And if just briefly, I'll make a little announcement. We do have a relatively new assistant director, Nikki Winslow. We have a marketing administrator at the Library Arts and Culture Department, Maria Sundin. She's just brand new. And we also changed hands a little bit up at Brand Library. The new senior supervisor is Kaylee Cannon. So all three of those individuals may have a hand in arts and culture and indeed in your programming. Would Maria like to come up and say a couple of words? Maria's got a great experience in PR, a background in marketing, both in private and nonprofit sectors.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here and look forward to bringing library services and arts programs to the community at large. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. Welcome.
So please do call any of us. Our phone numbers are right up there. We will answer. Thank you.
Great. Thank you for that presentation. Lots of great activities. Any questions or comments before we?
Yeah, I have one. As long as Nikki's here, I'd just like to thank Nikki Winslow for giving the Brand Associates offered a tour of, kind of Brave New Library tour about all the cool 21st century things in the Central Library. And the people who went, I heard some really great feedback about the tour. I'm sorry I wasn't able to do it. And we really appreciate you coming in on a Saturday to give that tour. The pictures looked like it was really fun. So thank you.
Great. Next item, please.
Item 4, oral communications.
So we have one card from, oh, sorry, please proceed.
Discussion is limited to items not on this agenda. Each speaker is allowed 5 minutes. The commission may question or respond to the speaker, but there will be no debate or decision. The commission may refer the matter to city staff for investigation and report.
Thank you. We have one card, Uda Baum. Welcome.
Hi. Hello, everybody. My name is Ute Baum. I live in the Adams Hill area of Glendale. And first of all, I want to thank you all, whatever you had to do with painting these artworks on all these wonderful utility boxes. It's such a joy to walk or drive through Glendale and see them practically on every street corner, especially in South Glendale where I live. And so here's public art for everybody to enjoy. But my particular reason for being here today is, again, those utility boxes, which happen to be, a couple of which happen to be in my neighborhood on Adams Square. One of them in front of our wonderful new little cafe called Caffeine, and that's at 1019 East Palmer, and the other one is next door at the Palmer Market at 1011. And I did find out, and would like to have those painted as well, if possible. I did find out that I think one of them belongs to the city of Glendale, and the other one, I think I talked to you, Mr. White, or didn't talk to you, but called you to find out if I could figure out who the other one belonged to and who to contact. So I have one picture my printer gave out this morning, so please share, but it's pretty evident what is on here. And I'd like to make a case for having these two boxes painted as well, especially because they're in front of our cherished new little cafe that we just, really want to promote, and we want to create a scene here at Adams Square that is beloved by all. And so I would like whatever you can do, Mr. Wyke, and you on the board here to see if we can get those two boxes painted. Thank you very much.
Well, first, thank you very much for joining us. So our Arts and Culture Commission, we sponsor and we fund the Beyond the Box program. And the staff that's here today are the ones that recruit the artists and manage the entire program. So if you could leave your contact info with our staff, we'd make sure that we can follow up and see. Because one of the challenges is whether or not they're owned by the city, to see if we're able to do that. One of the challenges is to know whether or not they are owned by the city, to see if they're eligible to be used. But we'd be happy to follow up with you.
Does that mean that if they're not owned by the city, they won't be adorned with art?
We would hope that all of them would be adorned with art, but it will be up to other parties that unfortunately are beyond our control.
Okay.
But we'll be happy to follow up with you.
Wonderful.
Thank you. Next item, please.
Item 5, business agenda. At 5A, action item. At 1, note and file item, draft South Glendale Community Plan Overview.
Chair and members of the Library Arts and Culture Commission. My name is Laura Stotler. I'm a principal planner with the city, and we've been working on the South Glendale Community Plan for a number of years. Give you a little history of where we're at as soon as I figure out how to do this. There we go. When we talk about the South Glendale Community Plan, what we're looking at is the area that's south, generally south of the 134 freeway, and including downtown specific plan areas. So you see there's a little finger that goes up, including up to Glen Oaks. That's part of the South Glendale community. That's part of the downtown specific plan area, also part of the South Glendale Community Plan. The South Glendale Community Plan is a tool to implement our general plan. We have various elements of our general plan. Our land use element was first adopted back in 1977. We had an update in 1986. We really haven't updated it since then. And so it's a challenge for us on how do we actually implement development policies throughout the city, especially in South Glendale, where we've seen so much growth and development. In the past, we have asked for money to update our general plan, but just because of budget constraints, we haven't received it. And instead, council said, why don't you go out, survey the neighborhoods? We'll come up and start doing community plans. And we started that back in 2008. We started with a North Glendale Community Plan. That was adopted, and now we've continued our study in South Glendale. One of the surprises that we had when we started South Glendale is the results of the 2010 census came back, and we found out that we actually lost population in Glendale. I'm not saying it was actual loss, but that is the result of the census. And so as a result of that, we needed to update some of our land use tools. We had to have an update to our traffic and circulation model, our traffic model. We also had to update our land use. So it took several years for us to do that. Now we're back on track with processing the South Glendale Community Plan. And I know we sent you some links where you could take a look to see what we have online. I'll quickly go over what we have in the document, but I just wanted you to understand that what this is a way that we take our existing documents and make them relevant to South Glendale. So we're not necessarily out there changing policies. We want to say how we can make our policies better in the neighborhoods. If you take a look at our existing land use element, you'll see that we don't address individual neighborhoods at all. So this is why we really want to focus on what do you see, and that really falls under Chapter 4. I'll go over that a little bit, but in terms of what's the horizon time for a South Glendale Community Plan, we're looking out to 2040. That coincides with the planning documents that are being prepared by the Southern California Association of Governments, SCAG. They have what's known as a RTP and a SCS, the Regional Transportation Plan and Sustainable Communities Plan. So we want our plan to dovetail with in the region documents. Again, we're looking at how do we address these changing land use patterns and make them sustainable. So I would direct your attention especially to Chapter 4, because we spend a lot of time identifying policies that we can really apply to the individual neighborhoods that we're studying. We're also concerned with community character and the past projects. How do we take what's already happened in the neighborhood? How do we make our area more livable for the future? We still have capacity for development. How do we make that development fit in? And then we also have citywide policies and regional initiatives. Not only do we have the RTP SCS, we also have greenhouse gas reduction strategies that we need to address at a regional level. So if you think of that, that's kind of the regional framework that we're looking at in creating a community plan. For a little bit of background, after we prepared our background land use data, we did it, we now have 2016 land use data for the city. Before that, we hadn't updated it since 1990, so we do have updated data. We have an updated traffic model. Based on that, we went and met with council in summer of 2016. We had a couple of different option items. Council identified the project that they wanted us to study. It's based on moving people. If you think about it, it's really a transportation-based plan. Again, it's a tweaking of what was done back in 1977. It's the only direction that we got from council is how do we make our transit, how do we make it more effective? How do we maximize the use of what we've already spent public money on in terms of moving people? And I'm going to show you a map in a minute. They authorized us to go ahead to do a draft environmental impact report. We had a meeting with the public in fall of 2016. We had numerous public outreach meetings. We had over 20 meetings we had with the public. Those are also identified in the community plan, chapter 6, I believe. And then we had an EIR that came out. It was out in January of this year. The public comment period was extended. It was a 60-day public comment period rather than the regular 45. And right now we're preparing response to those comments. We anticipate that a final environmental impact report will be out in May. So while we're here today, we're looking for comments on the community plan, if you have any, but not necessarily the environmental impact report because the public comment period has closed. So this was the project that council directed us to study. We have the different colors identified. We've broken down areas into maintain, enhance, and transform. The areas that you see in yellow are areas where we're not expecting a lot of change, less than 1% change between now and 2040. Those are almost exclusively our residential areas, multifamily and single-family areas that are in South Glendale. Where we're really anticipating change would be along our corridors. And those are the areas that are basically shown in pink and in an orange color. The pink would be transformed. That's where we think we're going to have the most change. We've already done the downtown specific plan. So you'll see the large swath, if you're familiar with the downtown Glendale. It's basically the area north of Colorado, roughly between Brand and Central. That's the area that we already have that adopted. We're not looking at changing that now. We're looking at the other corridors. You can think of them as Colorado, because this is the areas where the corridors where we think we're going to have transportation. So Colorado, Broadway, Central, and then we have the area that's down south around our transit station that's known as Tropico. I don't think I have a pointer on this, but, oh, here we go. This is the Tropico area here. Down here is our Metrolink station. As part of the option that council told us to study, we have, and again, this would be the most intense option. What this does is looking at transportation opportunities, not only the ones within the city, but also the ones external to us, the ones that are being proposed by Metro. So our project that we're looking at would be this green line here. We're studying right now a streetcar. So this would be the only project that's actually under the control of City of Glendale wholly. We're also looking at, along here, expansions of bus routes that we already have and what's known as a BRT, bus rapid transit. At the time we started this EIR, we were studying putting one in along Broadway. Another option that we studied is to put one, if one goes in along Central, we don't know exactly where that's going to go. That's funded by Metro. There's studies going on now. Again, they're not our studies, but we're participating with them. We also have studies that are going on, again, with Metro, putting in perhaps a light rail along our 134 freeway. It could be the BRT. We don't know what's ultimately going to go there. So in terms of this study, we're looking at all options of what could it be, because we want to make sure that we anticipate what might impact Glendale. Even if it's not coming from Glendale, these obviously are huge transportation projects that will have an impact upon our residents. How do we maximize our use of essentially our dollars, because all of our dollars are going into the regional projects too. The other issue we have is the Metrolink itself. Right now we have limited service, but if high-speed rail goes in, they're looking at coming through the city. We might have triple tracking throughout Glendale. It'll increase our regional connectivity. The other thing they're looking at doing is if that does go in and we do have triple tracks, not only do we have existing Metrolink, which is a commuter rail, it does have limited service, but if they actually expand the tracks, one of the things they're looking at doing is providing local service. So right now, if you think of New York where you have express trains and local trains, we might have the same thing here. You can think of a commuter rail as your express train, but if they do with local service, we'd be looking at adding potentially new stations, additional service. So if you take a look at our study, we're also looking at adding potential stations where you see these M's. These might be, depending on where they go in the future, you might have them at some of our major corridor connections throughout Glendale. So we'll probably add something perhaps along Colorado, and then probably something up by Pelincone if this goes through. So again, this is an overall plan. We had to study an option So we studied what we thought would be the most intense option. I'm not saying we think this is going to happen, but in terms of the environmental impact report, we want to know what we think a worst case could be. And we also want to look at what happens if we do try to maximize the use of transportation opportunities that may be coming through Glendale. So part of that optimization, and there we go, optimization would be on either side of our major roads. This would be our central. We're looking at putting in an area that would be for affordable housing. Right now, if you're familiar with the history of Glendale, most of that area is multifamily. We had a huge downzoning that occurred in 1986. We used to have a lot of this area that was built higher than our highest zone now. Our highest zone right now is R1250. That's 1 unit for every 1,250 square feet of lot area. We used to have R750 throughout large swaths of South Glendale. So in 1986, when they changed the zoning, we downzoned. A lot of these areas along this corridor were downzoned. So what are the proposals that we're looking at doing in terms of maximizing the use of transit would be going back to R1250 or our highest zone along the entire length of these roads where we're looking to have extensions. So that would be 1 block either way of Broadway, 1 block either way of Colorado, and 1 block either way of Central, should that be extended. And I would point out on our plan, what we're looking at is not increasing any density until transit becomes available. As you're well aware of, we don't ever know when that's going to occur. We're planning for a possibility that could occur, making sure our documents are ready to address it should something change for us. For instance, if the BRT comes in, again, it wouldn't be a Glendale project, it would be a regional project. We would already have a study in place to know how can we maximize our development to take advantage should that come through.
What's the BRT? I'm sorry. What is the BRT?
BRT is Bus Rapid Transit. So if you're familiar with the Orange Line that runs through the valley, it's a bus line with limited stops, and it would give us connectivity to other areas of the city, I think, or the region. I think right now they're looking at connecting the BRT to North Hollywood, I believe. Yeah. So in terms of what is the purpose of the South Glendale Community Plan, we have a neighborhood purpose. Again, you'll really see that in Chapter 4 if you look through. We also coordinate with past planning efforts. If you take a look at Chapter 5, you'll see an extensive overview of the projects that we've done since 1977. That's when we adopted our last major update, or actually, that's when we adopted the land use element. All the projects we've had in South Glendale, since that time, we've included in that update. And again, most of these they're not, when I'm thinking of planning projects, we're thinking of physical improvements, not necessarily like you're having a cultural plan you're doing right now. We've really focused on that update on what kind of projects had a physical impact to South Glendale. We also have a Metro grant that we're doing. That's how we're paying for the study. We had a Metro grant that was done to create a Tropico study. Again, that's looking at our Metro station, which is called the Tropico area of the city. Based on those policies that we're getting out of the Tropico study, most of those are how do you connect to the neighborhood. So it's what type of streetscape do we want to see? How do we want sidewalks to work? How do we want how wide should our streets be? How do we want to have our sidewalks look? How do we want to have our landscaping addressed? Things like traffic safety, safe routes to school. A lot of those issues are all addressed in the Tropico study. We can take that information on how do you want a neighborhood to look and transport that to neighborhoods throughout Glendale. So that's really what you see if you take a look at Chapter 4. One of the items that we have in Chapter 4 is going to be public improvements. How do we deal with that transition area? A lot of times I'll call it first mile, last mile. How do you get people to walk from their homes to a bus and vice versa? How do you get people out of their cars? How do you get people to go to our parks? How do you get people out and moving in the community other than by cars? And so those are the kind of policies that you'll see coming from the Tropico study into the neighborhoods throughout South Glendale. That's really the heart of this study. And again, it's a transit-based study. We're not out to holistically change the land uses that were adopted back in 1977 and have been periodically changed since then, but it's more of a connectivity that we're looking at. And having that, we have a policy gap. You have a citywide plan, and nothing really says how does that work on an individual neighborhood level. So that's our transit. One of the things we also had, that's our Tropico study. Our transit-oriented development is actually what kind of zoning would we need to do to maximize our transit center? That's the area by Tropico. If you think of it, it's the area between the Metrolink station to the hospital, Glendale Memorial Hospital, if you think of South Glendale. And that was part of us getting the grant from Metro. We had to come up with zoning options for that too, general plan options where if council wants to proceed with that. And then the other grant we have is for the EIR, the Environmental Impact Report. So that's all folded into this document. Transit-oriented development policies, you'll actually see a chapter that we've called Transit-oriented Development where we talk about Tropico in the Community Plan, Chapter 4. We've also incorporated policies from the Safe and Healthy Streets Plan and the Draft Pedestrian Plan. Those are also incorporated. Again, it comes back to the whole theory of transit. How do we get people, transportation, pedestrians, bicycles, how do we get people out, give ourselves options to automobile? So when we look at the community plan itself, it's not in a vacuum. We have a community plan that we're looking to have them adopt. We're also looking at having amendments to the land use and circulation element. Again, our land use element does not address community plans. We want to make sure they do. We want to look at the different options of our land use that we have in the area now. We all recognize them. It's just we have an outdated element. It hasn't been looked at. So you can think of this as basically a stopgap. So at least we have consistency between our land use element and what's in the community plan. We're also looking at our circulation element. Again, that's outdated as well because we had to do a new traffic model. So we have some minor adjustments to at least bring this project into consistency with our circulation element. In the long term, you'll see one of the implementation measures, one of the first implementation measures we have in the community plan is should they adopt these and think of them as minor adoption, minor element amendments. Following, if they adopt the community plan, next year we'll be looking at citywide updates to a land use and circulation element. And we'll probably call it a mobility element simply because land use and circulation really can't be separated. One impacts the other holistically, so we recognize that. It's not recognized in our existing documents, but we know this is true, so in the future you'll see that as an implementation measure. Again, we have local and regional transportation networks. We're cooperating with SCAG, our Southern California Association of Governments. We want to make sure all of our traffic models and our policies are consistent with regional models, not only because it makes for a better network, it also gives us funding opportunities for our transit needs. We're looking at, again, an affordable housing overlay, not only to maximize the use of transportation, which may be expanded in the city. We wouldn't be looking at an affordable housing overlay until the transit is available. So this isn't a matter of, we bump up the density and then transit comes. We would want the transit there. Then we would propose upping the residential densities along those corridors where transportation would be available to serve residents. We're looking at downtown specific plan zone change. Now we're getting kind of the nitty gritty. We actually have 21 lots where there's split zoning. Right now it's downtown specific plan zoning and some other zoning. We're looking at combining those lots so we would have a single zone on the lot. The reason we do that is so it's predictable of what kind of land use could be on the area. Right now it's hard to predict if you have mixed zoning. So I think of this as a cleanup effort. We also have a C3-3 zone change on 6 lots. If those are familiar with zoning, C3-1 gives you a 50-foot height limit. That's the majority of our heights in South Glendale. We have one lot almost across the street actually from the city, or a handful of lots almost across the street from our city campus here up on Wilson that actually have a height limit of 90 feet. Obviously, it's not consistent with what the neighborhood is. So for those 6 lots, we're looking at bringing the height down. One of those lots is actually developed with an apartment, so we just want to make sure, again, zoning consistency, we're looking for that one lot to bring down R1250.
Sorry, I'm not familiar with zones very well. I mean, is it like commercial zone or residential zone, or there are probably many different types of zones?
Yeah, that's exactly
like downtown zoning is what exactly?
Downtown zoning is mixed use. So mixed use gives you commercial and residential. It's a combination. And so when we look at downzoning, I can explain it later after the meeting, but when we look at downzoning, you take the density that could be provided now, and you're proposing a zone that would allow lesser density. In terms of the downtown specific plan, we would be taking zones that don't allow for mixed use and allowing mixed use on those zones. And then you can think of it in this area here, it's really an adjustment. Right in here is where we're looking at doing, you'll see the area looks like commercial. This is the area that now allows up to 90 feet. We just think that's way too tall. That's not what it's developed at. Most of the buildings, if you think of our old credit union, you'll know that building is basically 45 to 50 feet tall. We want to make sure that we just have a zoning that will match what's already there. So this is, when we looked at our environmental impact report, these are really the land uses we studied. It's pretty much a mirror of what we already have, with the exception of what are the uses that we would be looking at putting in along our corridors. And again, we're looking at essentially on our corridors mixed use, leaving the rest of the zoning and general plan as it is in the residential areas, with the exception of a handful of lots in the DSP. So Trapicos, this is the reason we're looking at having connectivity. Where this is where you have the purple star, this is our train station. And so when we look at Tropico, all this is a walkable area or a walkable distance, but it's not very welcoming. So what can we do to make that area more user-friendly, increase the, I would say, the desirability of that area for people who live there to get out and walk. So we're looking at, it is a gateway to Glendale. We're looking at improvements to make the city look more attractive. We're looking at having public open spaces, taking advantage not only of the hospital, but also of the train station in the area. We're looking at adding a linear park to Cerritos, making it more attractive for Glendale Memorial. You may have seen where we actually blocked off. We did a vacation on portions of Laurel Street, and if you've been down there to look at Glendale Memorial, you've seen where they've put more landscaping in. It's a much safer crossing if you're at their parking lot from the hospital. It was a safety improvement. We're also looking at better designs for street. And again, transit-oriented development and affordable housing are our ultimate goals, not just in Glendale, but that would be statewide. For the community plan areas, maintaining neighborhood character, walkable streets, we're looking at economic development. These are all different things that we would be looking at under all the models that we studied for South Glendale. Again, expanded transit. We wouldn't be changing any zone until transit's available. I can't stress that enough. Right now, we don't have a coordinated plan for streetscape enhancements that works with our zoning other than the Tropico plan, and that again, that we're looking at extending that throughout South Glendale. Integrated public open space, multiple activity centers, multiple transit centers, and we have opportunity sites. We have areas that are underdeveloped, and we feel that there's opportunities to make them more attractive and maximize their land use for service to Glendale. One of the areas we also looked at is Space 134. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that, but it's sometimes called the freeway cap. And so that's also addressed in our document. We don't know when or if it'll occur, but we want to make sure that we've planned for it should it occur. So again, our draft DIR, we anticipate that will be out for public review by the end of May. We're looking at taking it to the Planning Commission by May 30th. Then we will be taking it to the City Council with the Planning Commission's recommendations. So if you give us any recommendations today, all those recommendations will be forwarded to the Planning Commission. Again, it's their document, so whatever you tell us, we will provide it to them for their consideration. And then we are anticipating that the council will take action. The soonest would be sometime perhaps end of June or July. And again, all the documents are available for public review at the city's website, so we encourage everybody to take a look and send us comments. Even if the EIR is closed, we're still taking comments on the document. So that concludes my presentation. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Commissioner Vidor, you want?
Yeah, as you were talking through it, obviously you know that the Arts and Culture Commission is working on a public art master plan, and we talk about a lot of the same things, how to bring people connectivity, streetscape, improving the look and artistry of our public utilities, even things as, small as benches and lights, and, just generally adding an art component to the city. And so it seems like somewhere along the line, and maybe there'll, a recommendation will come out of this, the public art master plan, which is not yet adopted, so it still, needs to be finished, should somehow be integrated into the, the whole city, obviously, but since there's a South Glendale community plan in the works, it should go in there. And to what level and to what degree there would be, intermingling of those two things, I'm not sure, but I think that's an important element here based on the things that you mentioned.
One of the things I would point out is if you take a look at Chapter 3 in the community plan, what Chapter 3 are basically citywide principles, and how do those citywide principles relate specifically to the South Glendale neighborhood? 3.8 is a chapter that talks about community services. So that's it talks about things like public art and we concern museums. It's where we've identified that we have museums and like in Forest Lawn, we have an arts and culture area in our downtown, so that's something we could absolutely add reference to, that we a public arts master plan there.
Well, I would agree with Commissioner Vidor. I would take it one step or a few steps further, and I think there should be active cooperation between your body and our commission, because, as she said, and as we've been working for many years, is to create a huge plan, public art master plan for the city. And unless we cooperate with you who are planning to do community plan and how to do land use in different ways, we can't get what we need to get done for the city. So I think cooperation is critical in this point. And this is a very fortunate time because plans are being created and at the same time, and so they could be melded. And so I think we should come up with a way where we cooperate very closely. You should come to our meetings. We should go to your meetings. We should see some of the ideas that are in the public master plan can be incorporated in this, and some of these ideas that are here, which are critical, which we have no idea, at least I don't know anything about land use, really, how that could impact how art is deployed and put in our city, right? So I think these are critical things that we should think about right now.
Commissioner Shrigan?
Well, being a member of the commission for 5 years now, and I haven't heard something like this before coming to our meeting. It's perfect. Thank you very much. This is an excellent information for us, and the document that you have presented, I think it's only the tip of the iceberg. You guys have done so much work that you put the information together, and now you give it to us, and we are like, this is opportunity for us. This is something we can definitely work with you. We can definitely add some information. We can definitely add opinions, because we have doing some homework, like Art and other commissions said, that we need to cooperate more and be partners in a way. What referring to the policies, that's what made me interesting. How you can take a certain subject, a master plan that you guys are working, and we are working on a master plan, to make it a policy. We have, in our master plan, we were talking about 10-year plan. But you guys are talking beyond that. So this is something definitely, it's a phase issue. We can definitely sit down and talk probably in the next year and a half or 2 years, and then have a plan for the next 10 years and then another 10 years. So a decade plan will be probably the most approachable way to do it, most probably, but we don't know yet. A lot of issues that you brought it up to us, specifically the density and the traffic. That is so much information there that it's important issue. So we are going to grow in a very slow motion, and at the same time keep the flow of the traffic, the flow of the pedestrians and the bicycle route. This is very important information, and that's where we can probably implement or help you guys, tell you, okay, if we have Colorado route, we have South Glendale, San Fernando Road, if we have 10,000 cars going through this side, we can come up with ideas how we can make the art blend in with the traffic. I mean, there are so much things to say. A couple of things I want to add. Land use. We are striving as an art, public art, to see where we have land to use the public art programs. This is something definitely we can help you guys with our programs. This is something definitely we can join you and make not only the traffic and transit make it smooth, but also enjoyable for our residents. Because that's what we're going after, that how we can make the Glendale a city where it's not only friendly, but at the same time, if someone they can come in and enjoy. It's the public art, it's landscape, it's the businesses, it's everything. That's what we're trying to shoot. Finally, as Ara said, partnering or joining or helping each other, I would suggest to be really in a work plan is either to have a staff member to be present at your meetings or one of our commissioners be present just for observing, nothing more than taking decision. And that will probably start the fastest way to help each other. And but this is great. This is an excellent idea, and all the plans that you guys are talking about. We do have, for example, in our master plan, gateway art. For example, from south to north, from north to south, east to west, west to east. So there are certain gateways, and we are thinking of making some type of art plan or artwork for those gateways. This is something definitely we can work together. And the whole presentation that you just did, it's in our agenda, but in a different perspective, from artwork perspective. But thank you very much for coming. Thank you.
I have one more quick question. Laura, did you or anyone involved with the South Glendale Community Plan, did you talk to Barbara Goldstein, and did anyone not in planning have a one-on-one with her?
I've not talked with Barbara Goldstein.
Okay, because, you did? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, members of commission, Commissioner Vidor. So she came on and presented this was probably over a year ago. I know she sat down with myself. I think Mr. Platt was in the room. And then also one of our other urban designers, Chris Agardi. So we did sit down and speak with her, and she just kind of gave us a basic idea of what her intentions were, but the plan hadn't been really baked out yet. So we haven't really seen the plan itself, only just she was asking for our feedback on where we thought some artwork could go so that she could mold that into the plan itself. So
I guess, part of the thing isn't, the idea of the public art master plan, when you do read it either in draft form or it'll soon be finalized, is not, the idea of museums and art plonked down in different places where there's an open space. The idea, and it's repeatedly mentioned in the plan, is to have an arts element and a person who can oversee that aspect of things for everything physical that's done in the city. So it's, I know Ms. Stotler was talking about these are physical things we're talking about, and we were talking about physical things too that don't just relate to specific art projects, but actually the entire built environment in Glendale. So it's a very integrational type of a plan. It isn't just plonking art down. It has to do with public utilities and public things and all kinds of stuff. So it really, impacts, I think, the execution of the South Glendale Community Plan quite a bit when it starts to kick in and we start looking at doing things. So there has to be, the two have to talk to one another.
yeah, so if I can add something, right now the South Glendale Community Plan is kind of the next phase in our community plan design. We do have the East and West plan, and we're slowly starting to do that. To me, when we do update the East-West plan, when we have more information about where you guys are at with your art master plan, then as part of that, we can slowly incorporate that into that the remaining plans themselves. So if we add it to the east and west plan, then we can add it to South Glendale, North Glendale plan as well at the same time and integrate it that way. So there's opportunities for us to integrate your art plan, and then as planners are reviewing documents, that'd be one of the documents they look at when we're looking at large-scale developments. So.
Great.
Well, thank you for the presentation. First, as a South Glendale resident, I'm very happy that as a city we're going to have more focus, and I appreciate everybody's work to develop this plan, because this is a very short version of it, but I have reviewed the full document and it's quite extensive. So I had a couple quick questions. So on the public art master plan, I mean, it's a vision document that we as a commission later will be coming back year to year with taking pieces of it and saying, okay, this is what we want to implement for this coming year. And then that goes to council. Council approves that and that gets implemented. I was curious, I mean, is this more of a vision document that over time will become reality through private developers developing in these pockets, city investing in city projects? Kind of what is the implementation of this into reality?
It implements our general plan. Right now, we don't have a good policy that when a developer comes in, we can show them the overall city general plan, but how does that relate to the neighborhood? So you can take a look at Chapter 4, a lot of information on design guidelines, what types of public improvements we want to see. It's really a guiding document for development between now out to 2040. It's not static, as Eric was saying. All of we envision our community plans to be usable documents that people can take and use, and as things change in our community, we'll update them. When we need to have a change in policies, council can easily do that, and now we'll have a tool where it makes sense. We said this is what it means in the city. If you look at our land use element right now, all land uses is citywide, so what's going on in South Glendale is not necessarily what you see going on in one of the canyons or up in North Glendale. This really tailors it, so it works well if you're looking at different, like for instance, the gateways. Gateways is perfect because that's exactly what we're looking at, having a policy. How do we want to address a gateway? How do we want it to look? How do we want it to function? So it goes hand in hand with what you're talking about in terms of public art, in terms of how do we want our transit stops to look? How do we want to design them? Absolutely, that's something that could be in the document. And we may not put things on, like, what do we want the buses to actually look like? Because again, rolling stock, we're not really looking at something that's going to be physically on the ground, but a lot of the other, think of this document as really focusing on what's on the ground, but the policies would absolutely carry over. I mean, I hear what you're saying. I think there's areas we can absolutely incorporate this and make it stronger in our community plan, not only in Chapter 3, but in a lot of our neighborhoods. We can look at, especially our gateways, where you're looking at putting your public art and you have concerns with whether you might have traffic volumes. I'm assuming you're interested in that because you make art more visible. You make it more accessible to the average everyday person. We certainly have that data, and that could be something that we could incorporate in here as well. And like Eric was saying, it may not be in there immediately, but as soon as your plan's adopted, we could certainly put it in future plans and incorporate it later as we update these elements and the community plans.
And that was going to be my next question, because I know we have a greener Glendale plan. There's a pedestrian plan in development now, public art master plan in development now. So between now and 2040, do you foresee your document being a kind of a living document that gets revised?
Oh, absolutely. Okay. Yeah, I mean, that's our goal. We want to have a general plan that lives and breathes. And, I can't say why past actions have been what they've been, but we're very hopeful that we're starting to update our elements on a regular basis. And that means the public looks at things at a holistic level in Glendale, and then even more detail when it comes to the community plan. So we're hoping that we have that not only with North Glendale, South Glendale, East and West as well.
You guys want to say something?
Well, first of all, I neglected to introduce myself. I'm Eric Cross. I'm the Deputy Community Development Director. So Jay and I were just discussing the idea of there is streetscape design in the plan, and that's the obvious place to incorporate some art into those areas of the plan. So those are something.
And transit hubs.
Do you have budget for it?
Nope.
We have the budget for it.
We'll figure out that part later.
That sounds like
We'll work on
a better place that we could,
Yeah.
almost immediately integrate some of these ideas when we do streetscapes.
And there are
Now,
a
with
number.
with the streetcar we're talking about, we're looking at feasibility study for that right now. And that's obviously going to be on the ground, and there's going to have to be some modifications to platforms, that sort of thing. So that might be an idea where we could integrate some art as well, so.
Or the streetcar stops could be, designed by an artist, right? And that could introduce new art into the streetscapes,
Yeah.
right? Crosswalks. I mean,
absolutely, yeah.
the opportunities are really endless to bring art into places where you wouldn't even think there could be art. And what's that? Trash cans.
Trash cans.
Great idea. And I mean, I would say, I think it's really great that the plans get integrated on paper, but I think really should try to integrate actual people, ideas, exchange of ideas too, in some kind of format, structure. I don't know how that would happen, but
We talked at the not the beginning, I wasn't even here for the beginning, but we talked about having at some point like a study session, and I don't know whether it was before the plan was adopted, the public art master plan, or after, but that the different departments in the city that would need and want to know what the vision was for a public art master plan would want to have these things in mind so that, we are integrating and not, working along parallel tracks. So that might, I don't know if that's a proposal that we could make to have that at some point.
Well, I think, on that same note, I think that was my question about implementation, because I think you are professional planners, so you are looking at it through the prism of planning, and, we are looking at it from the prism of arts. And I think where the two have to come together is when we get to the implementation phase of what we're going to be doing, to be looking at the South Glendale Community Plan if it's going to be in South Glendale, looking at what our priorities are outlined in the public art master plan, and then that's where kind of the marriage has to happen to make sure that we're compatible with each other and we're doing the best thing for the residents and the businesses as well.
And since Mr. Platt's here, I mean, it's worth, I'm not asking you to say anything, but it's worth noting that there are actually a lot of commercial civic landmarks in South Glendale. I think I counted at least 18 designated ones and something like 90 potential ones that, can be hubs of art or get the attention of the community in some way because they are historically significant. So we'd also want to speak with and, interact with that part of the planning department too.
Great. Well, thank you very much for visiting. Thank you for the presentation.
Thank you.
Next item, please.
Item 5A2.
Apologize before we... So we will need a motion to note and file the South Glendale Community Plan.
Oh, to note that it was presented and filed.
Supposed to be
What does that mean?
recommendations carried forward?
So they are presenting it to us, but we are not the decision-making body. So we are just noting and filing that they did come make the presentation, and we had an opportunity to
Just questions.
review the plan.
But you mentioned that recommendations would be welcome from the commission if there were any.
Yeah, members of the commission, Commissioner Vidor, when we bring this back to Planning Commission, we will include the other boards and commissions we went to and what comments we heard as part of the staff's recommendation to the Planning Commission.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I move to note and file. Is that what I have to do?
Do you have a second?
Second.
Roll call, please.
Commissioners Oshagan,
Yes.
Sharikian,
Yes.
Vice Chair Vidor,
Yes.
Chair Sahakian.
Yes. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Next item, please.
Item 5A2, motion recommending that the city council approve the public art master plan developed by Community Arts Resources and Goldstein and Associates.
Great. So we will be pulling action item number 2 and 3 and bringing it back at a future meeting. But I think we should read action item number 3 as well. If you could read that into the record.
Item 5A3, note and file item, public art master plan implementation grid.
Great. So both items will be returning at a future meeting. Next item, please.
Item 6, commission staff comments.
Commissioner Shirky?
Considering that the next week is Armenian Genocide Week, in a way. I would encourage the public to participate, go to all the events, the free events, and I would just definitely say bravo to the GUSD, their event that they've done many schools and commemorate the Armenian genocide. This is something that's been going on in the city, citywide, and for many years. This is something we feel home, and it talks to our heart. Specifically, when a few minutes ago we heard about a plan that it extends to 2040, that means my grandchildren will be in Glendale, so that makes me feel like this is a true home for us. That's all. Thank you very much.
I just want to thank and commend the Friends of Socheon Tea House and Garden for an absolutely beautiful, extraordinary event this weekend. They did their first, I guess, annual Cherry Blossom Festival, planted trees, had a number of very interesting events, including a wonderful Akita parade of rescued Akita dogs and taiko drumming and all kinds of cultural things along those lines, and the group seems to really be, ramping up quite a bit in their activities, and so that was a nice event. I just wanted to commend them. Thank you.
Yeah, if I could make a quick note, 2 weeks ago, the Library Foundation Gala took place, and I just want to mention that their support of the library and the different programming that goes in there, specifically their support over the past year and into the future of the exhibitions and reflect space that we are having is very, very important and to be noted, and we very much appreciate what they're doing for us, for the community.
Great, and the Glendale Library Foundation event was great, and congratulations to all the honorees for all the work that they've been doing. It's very exciting with the new Downtown Central Library up and running, and all the programming that we get to hear about on the commission dais as well. So thank you to all the staff, and I think we'll move on to the next item.
Item 7, written communications.
And we have
There's
none.
none.
Next item.
Item 8, adjournment.
Great, we are adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.